Hello, everyone. So welcome to my session. My name is Paul Yang, and I'm the solution architect of CloudBees. I'm mainly responsible for supporting the customers across the APAC region. So today I'm going to share with you some of the interesting information regarding the Jenkins. Something that you may not know before, but it could be very helpful if you are looking for some of the, that enterprise level of Jenkins, which could be resilient, secure, easy to scale and manage. So, okay, let's begin. Now, first of all, I think let me answer a question first that maybe you will ask. So why it is always CloudBees talking about the Jenkins, right? So the reason is actually quite straightforward, because we are the major contributor of the open source Jenkins. And also, we also provide enterprise level of Jenkins. So you may wondering, so what is a major contributor? It's actually, as you can see here, actually we are actually contributing about 80% of the source code for the Jenkins. Then why and when do we need an enterprise version of Jenkins instead of the open source Jenkins? I think that maybe we can start from some of the key facts about the open source Jenkins first. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Jenkins, so Jenkins is a very popular open source CI tool that currently used by more than 70% of the developers worldwide. So with a decade evolving, actually Jenkins has developed into a mature ecosystem supported by a huge community. Now today, it has more than 1,800 plugins. And just because of its flexible architecture, it keeps integrating with some of the new tools and emerging technologies. So now, if you are maybe a startup company, or if you have a relative small development team, you may be quite happy with the open source Jenkins. Maybe everything looks fine. But with the business growth, maybe your development team will start to scale quickly. Now, maybe you will have hundreds, even thousands of the developers. And then at this time, you may have to scale the Jenkins as well. So just as similar as the other IT systems, actually, there are also two approaches to scale the Jenkins. So we can scale out, or we can scale up. And in the scale out model, different development teams can set up and manage their own Jenkins masters. So although developers can enjoy the maximum autonomy in this case, it could be very challenging for the DevOps team or for the administrators to apply the standards to have some central governance or the security rules on these independent Jenkins instances. So we usually call this a kind of the island of Jenkins. Well, you may be wondering, maybe for the scale-up model, it will be easier because it looks simple, right? So maybe all of the developers can share a single Jenkins master, and there is no too much instances that you have to take care of, right? But however, with more and more workload running on it, you will find that the performance degrades quickly. And finally, there will be a limitation for the scale, or because the hardware resources will have limitation, right? And what is worse, you will find that with more and more, it will be more and more hard to meet the needs of each team because all of the development teams share the same instance, but they have different configuration requirements, and they have different requirements for the plugins. And then you will find that there are a lot of configuration limits and conflicts. So it will in turn that slow down the application development. And to be more specific, while we try to scale with Jenkins, we may also see that some of the other limitations of the Jenkins as well. Now, for example, if we look at open source Jenkins itself, it will have the support issue. So it means that just as some other open source software, there is no technical support available for the Jenkins. And it means that if you meet any problems or issues, you have to solve it all by yourself. And also, the stability issues. So if you are an experienced Jenkins user, you must know that the plugin compatibility and the dependency issues, right? And also, sometimes you will find that the Jenkins could crash just during the upgrade. It's also because some of the plugin compatibility issues, right? And then, even if that you can bear with all of these problems or issues, maybe you want to scale and you go with the we call the Jenkins stand model, or the single, or we say that just a single Jenkins instance. And then obviously this single Jenkins master will actually become a single point of failure for your whole organization, right? You don't want it to be crashed or something. So. But if you set up an island of a Jenkins instead, right? You will set up a lot of Jenkins instances. That it will be maybe easily go out of control, because there is no visibility and there is no central governance and no security mechanism to put in place. And also, from the resource point of view, there will be, that there will be also some problems, because if you have some limited resources, such as some software licenses or some special hardwares that you want to share across all of the Jenkins instances, you cannot do this because currently Jenkins does not provide the agent share capabilities. And well, from the cost point of view, if you want to deploy, that multiple Jenkins instances, Jenkins masters on the public cloud, then maybe it is not cost efficient, because Jenkins masters will just running there whether you use it or not. That is why I think an enterprise version of Jenkins is needed. So, and the CloudBees CI is just the enterprise version of Jenkins. And now, let's see what values that CloudBees CI can bring to you. Now, from the architecture point of view, actually, CloudBees CI is also a scale-out model, but it is not an island of Jenkins, but cluster of Jenkins. Because we introduced a central management node, we call it Operation Center. And with this Operation Center, actually, we can manage the whole life cycle of all of the Jenkins instances, or we call controllers in the CloudBees CI. So the whole cluster, the CloudBees CI cluster, you can deploy them on different infrastructures. For example, you can deploy it, if you want, deploy it on the Kubernetes. And actually, this is a much easier approach to do. Or you can deploy it on the traditional infrastructures, such as the bare metals, virtual machines, etc. And if you want, you can even deploy that in the hybrid model. So specifically, when your CloudBees CI deployed on the Kubernetes cluster, it can leverage the capabilities of the Kubernetes for higher level of the flexibility, resilience, and automation. So for example, that when you're trying to create a new Jenkins instance, or we call controller here, actually with just some basic configuration and several maybe mouse click, then the Kubernetes will help you to provision the controllers automatically. And after the controller is spin up, the Kubernetes will also help you monitor the status of the controller, in which it will recover the controller once it is crashed for any reason. And also you can define as much container templates or the pod templates for the agent as you want. Now, because in the Kubernetes, this agent will only run in on-demand mode when the build task is triggered. So with this kind of architecture, actually CloudBees CI can solve either the single point failure issue for the Jenkins stand, or we say the single Jenkins master, or the out of control issue for the island of Jenkins. And what's more, I think that with if you have some limited resources, you can share all of this with all with all Jenkins instances through a central shared agent pool. And one unique value that CloudBees CI of the CloudBees CI is the verified plugins, and hence a stable version of Jenkins. So as mentioned, most of the Jenkins stability issues are actually caused by the plugins, right? And we believe that maybe the best solution is to let the experts to manage this topic instead of leave this topic, leave all of these issues to the end users. So, and here is how it works. So besides the priority plugins, so we CloudBees, we also pick a bunch of most widely used plugins in the community, and we introduced the CloudBees Assurance Program to manage all of these plugins. So just to ensure that there is no compatibility or dependency issues for each update. And we have a feature, we call it Beekeeper, for our end user to access these plugins. So just as its name indicates, Beekeeper, right? You can let the CloudBees take care of, that all of these plugins for you, and so that you can just focus on the software development. So with the stable version of the Jenkins plugins and supported by the CloudBees globally, our customers can, that they can always enjoy the smooth upgrades, and they do not need to worry about the Jenkins itself anymore. So I believe that this is something that many Jenkins users are hoping, right? And if you have a lot of Jenkins instances or the controllers, so you may be wondering how these controllers are managed centrally. So now, for example, we have some customers that are running hundreds of controllers or even 1,000 of controllers. Then how to manage all of these controllers? So now here is the answer. Now from the screenshot, actually we can see that most of the daily operation tasks actually can be executed on all controllers or the selected controllers. So this including the plugin management, the controller management, startup or shutdown, backup, restore, configuration, and the script execution, extra. And actually, you can define when and how these tasks should be executed. So through the operation center, actually you will have the visibility on all of the controllers or the Jenkins instances. And then you can manage their whole life cycle in an efficient way accordingly. Well, if you have to deploy the Jenkins on the public cloud, so you may hope that the Jenkins should be smart enough to close itself when anyone is using it, because it will generate cost, right? Especially when you have a lot of Jenkins running. Well, maybe currently the Jenkins is not so smart, but actually CloudBees CI is. So with one of our major feature, the controller hibernation, actually we can enable, if you enable this kind of feature on the CloudBees CI, which is deployed on the Kubernetes, actually the controller itself can close itself, can shut down itself when it's idle for some specific time. And then it will get back to work if someone trying to access it. So that by this kind of the auto hibernation features with the controllers, actually you will get much efficient infrastructure usage. And also, if you deploy it on public cloud, it will help you to save a lot of cost throughout the year. And security. So this is also something very important, right? So to ensure the minimum access the minimum access right for each user. We introduced the global level of the role-based access control in the global level of the CloudBees CI. So basically, you can integrate the CloudBees CI with the LDAP or AD, and you can define a role, group, and users, and you can grant their access rights in the, for example, the cluster level, in the folder level, or in the individual controller level, or even in some of the that object level of the in the controllers. So with this security measure put in place, I think that you do not need to worry that someone will delete the pipeline of some other teams, or even delete the Jenkins instances of other teams by mistake, right? Okay, now we have already seen quite some of the highlight features of CloudBees CI for the DevOps teams or for the administrators. But how about the developers, right? You may be asking. So although Jenkins itself has been quite powerful for developers, CloudBees CI we still add quite some of the capabilities on top of the open source Jenkins, and we are just trying to further improve the developers' efficiency. So let us have a quick look at what are these capabilities. Now, first of all, the most important one, configuration as code. So actually, basically, you can manage all of the Jenkins or all of the controllers in a GitOps way. So in CloudBees CI, all of the controllers, or maybe for you, maybe it's the Jenkins masters, they can be defined by the YAML files. So if you really love code and you like to manage everything with the code, this will be a perfect stage for you. You can play a lot of tricks here. Now, for example, if your teams are currently using different programming languages to develop applications, let's say Java, Python, Go, it's quite typical, right? So you may define some specific controller templates for these controllers. And you can configure them with the some needed plugins and the specialized and specific configurations. And then you can actually, if needed, you can update them quickly than by just pushing the changes from the Git repository. This will make the management of the whole cluster will be very easy, right? And in practice, I think that most development teams will prefer the pipeline instead of freestyle jobs for the CI/CD. So, but the problem is that the developing and debugging a pipeline, especially for some complicated projects, could be quite time-consuming and error-prone. Well, in CloudBees CI, actually developers, they do not need to develop the pipelines from scratch. Now, because we provide a feature that we can convert the freestyle jobs to the declarative pipelines. So basically, for the if you have a new project, you can configure the project in the freestyle job. You know that you can start from it and configure it as much as possible, and then you can let the CloudBees CI to transform it into a declarative pipeline for you. So now you can start from a template instead of starting from scratch. Well, if you are lucky that you may have some experts who are familiar with the pipelines. Now, maybe you can also benefit from the CloudBees CI as well, you know, that to sharing their expertise with the whole organization. So the idea is that we provide a feature we call pipeline template catalogs. Now, with this feature, so if you have some well-designed pipelines and you want to, you know, that to leverage this kind of pipelines to across your organization, so you can import these pipelines into the pipeline template catalogs, and then you can see it will all of these pipelines will show there this kind of customized pipeline template, and then if you have some of the new developers and new development teams on board, they can start a new application quickly just from these templates, right? Now, by this way, actually, if you have any best practices, if you have some of the policies that you want to enforce across your organization, maybe you can just put them into these templates and let your users start their application from these templates, right? And modern applications are actually very complicated, and it can include several pipelines that maybe that on different Jenkins instances or the controllers, and then there could be some dependencies that among them, and this dependency could be very complicated. Well, for example, now in a very typical test scenario, so you may have a your front-end pipeline, and you also have a back-end pipeline. And then before your front-end pipeline to be executed, you may want the back-end pipeline to be deployed first. So in this case, actually, the operation center that we mentioned, the central management node, can also work as that kind of message broker. So this message broker can receive the event from the backend pipeline when it is deployed successfully, and then it can trigger the execution of the front pipeline, even if the backend the pipeline and the front-end pipeline are running on different controllers. So with this kind of mechanism, actually CloudBees CI can support very complicated pipeline coordination scenarios. So I think that it can meet most of our modern application development environment, right? And just as mentioned earlier, so we are the major contributor of the Jenkins. And hence, we understand well that what are the limitations with the current Jenkins version. So actually, part of our efforts have just been invested on some of the proprietary plugins that can improve the user experiences from different perspectives. Now here are just some of the examples of the proprietary plugins that we developed for the CloudBees CI, which means that they are not available for the open source Jenkins. So maybe we can have a look what they are. Now, for example, if you have this kind of requirements that you want to load balance the agents, right? We have plugin to support them. And if you want to limit the number of the concurrent builds, right? Because of the resource limitation. And also, maybe you want the build job continue even if the Jenkins crash, so that all of your previous work will not lost. Or maybe you want to enforce the best practices, throughout all of the plugins. Or maybe you want to change the Jenkins to the maintenance mode, so that although Jenkins is running, but there is no build task is allowed to run. Or you want to restart a bodied build automatically. So this would happen now. For example, if you have Jenkins, that crash for some reason, there are some of the build tasks maybe just running at that time, and then when the Jenkins or the controller recover quickly, then all of the build task that previously was running, and they will get restarted automatically. Or maybe you want to disable the job temporarily because you need to make some big changes or something, so that you don't want any engineers to update it or something. Or you want to integrate the CloudBees CI with some of the mostly used communication software, such as Slack or Microsoft Teams. So, yeah. So this is just some of the examples. So this is the effort that we are trying to improve the user experiences of the Jenkins, so that you can see actually the controller, why we call it controller, because it's different, that compare with the open source Jenkins. So we add quite something that could be helpful for you. So with the above features and the capability, I think now it is clear that why and when we should consider to use the CloudBees CI instead of the open source Jenkins. So in short, if you are considering some of the enterprise level requirements, such as the resiliency, the global governance, the scalability, flexibility, the security, and some expertise support, extra. If you're really considering this kind of stuff, maybe it's time for you to consider to use CloudBees CI instead of the open source Jenkins. Okay, so far we have talked a lot about Jenkins and the CloudBees CI. But please note that CloudBees is not just about Jenkins. Actually, we also have quite some of the other products that could be important building block of your DevSecOps platform. Now, for example, this is just a screenshot of our another product. The product is the CloudBees CDRO, which is a kind of the flow management tool that can help you to integrate your teams, your tools, and your processes in a single platform, and then give you a complete visibility on all of the status on your software release process. And this is an overview of the capabilities that you can get from CloudBees product portfolio. So basically, just as we have talked a lot, you can scale your CI/CD process with the CloudBees CI. And you can get the software release orchestration and visibility with the CloudBees CDRO. And you can have the real-time data insight with the CloudBees Analytics. And if you want to have a progressive rollout of the new features, you can go with the feature management. And also, we will have an instant compliance verification tool. We call it CloudBees Compliance, which will be released quickly, just very soon. So last but not least, so thanks to our global partnership with some of the global CSPs, such as the AWS and GCP. Actually, you can get the CloudBees products set up quickly on these platforms. So basically, you can access our products directly from their marketplace. And if you want, you can have a trail for some of the products. If you want to go to the procurement, the procure process will be very convenient. And as a bonus, you can get the knowledge share, such as the best practices from the previous customer cases. So that's all for today. I think that if you have any further questions on any of our CloudBees products, so please just visit our booth, and we're more than happy to have any deep dive discussions with you on the details, on some of the details. So great, thank you. So enjoy your rest of your session.